Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Zach Kongonis. We are here to bring you the best solutions to your lifting problems. Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way.
Best offshoot to Nexus you've ever seen, just completely off target.
But Nexus reacts. What would you react to?
Same, just music. Me and Alex are doing similar music. The difference is, like, with the channels that I watch, they're like composers. They're smart, and so they're like, oh, I can hear they're in like this chord and they're progressing and blah blah blah, and they're actually talking through, and I find that interesting. But then, like, if I did one, it would just be
you banging
this
your
is
head.
fucking sick. It just I'll have to just bring the energy because I got nothing else, you know. So yeah, I don't know how successful that would be.
You waiting for the bass to drop on every song. It's like, yeah, just wait. Just hold on. Just give it another second. There it is.
God, that's a different reaction.
I feel like
Anyway.
yes. Welcome to podcasting with Zach.
Yeah, we are. Today we have yet another guest. One that, if people have been following Nexus for a while, would know. And it is Luke Leaman from Muscle Nerds.
Hello.
And he is here to speak with us as, at this time, a guest presenter in the upcoming Nexus mentorship on health and within that a little bit more specifically on blood pressure. So we've done a little bit of work, did a video together on it, like a short form video. Yep. So in this time we'll go a little bit more in depth because I feel like blood pressure is something that within performance sports, especially powerlifting, where it's very, very specific. It's so easy to just go like, I'll throw that in the bin and because performance, you can just drive so hard until you're dead. Yeah. You know what I mean? In powerlifting. So, blood pressure is much more scary once you understand it. And I understand it because I did your course, and then I've done your full hypertension course. And then that made me go like, God damn, I knew this shit was scary. But then when you say some of the figures, it's like, holy fuck.
When you're researching it, you're like, whoa, what the holy shit. I got to tell people about this stuff. And then you're constantly measuring your blood pressure 4 times a day.
That's what I was about to say. Where you're sitting there like writing it, going like,
oh God, I'm at 121/81. I'm going to die. You're like, okay, you're not that bad.
Yeah, that's all right. That's much better than the measurements I get back. That's for sure.
When I was competing in powerlifting, nobody talked about this. I mean, we're talking 20-something years ago.
Yeah. I
was 123, 124 kilos. I could barely walk up a flight of stairs without needing a post-workout shake. I would take a shit, my whole face would be purple. Yeah. We never took our blood pressure back then.
That's probably Zach on an everyday basis, though, because Zach has a lot of digestive issues.
It's a struggle. It's a struggle. I can understand.
What's your blood pressure at the moment, Zach? Let's go around and give each other's blood pressure readings.
Right now. We have got one in here.
We have got one in here.
We've both just slammed some caffeine, so I don't know if it's a bit there.
I want to get this out. Zach, what's
I've
yours?
got less than no idea. I have not checked my blood pressure in like 6 months.
Oh, there you go. We've got a culprit right here.
Exactly.
But we do have a cuff right here. We keep it in the gym so everybody that signs up, they don't all do it because they don't care, but
I'd hate to actually get your readings though.
Right now they would be extreme. Yeah, I don't want to get them.
When we first started teaching about that stuff, I was really surprised at how many coaches did not know their client's blood pressure. They're like, we don't take it. It's not in our scope of knowledge. I'm like, hold on a second. It is massively in your scope of knowledge. You don't have to pull out the doctor garb and a stethoscope and a sphygmomanometer or whatever they call it. You've got technology. You just put it on them and hit the button. Because if you don't do that, how do you know what you're doing? Is that going to be a positive or negative physiological response for them?
Yeah, exactly. You don't know which direction to go, like where they're at, and we'll get into like some of how it affects performance and adaptation as well. But I think it's because it's just not being healthy isn't sexy. Like when you're talking to powerlifters, they're all about what's your 1RM, bro. How, like fucking pulling up lifts videos or like selling performance, selling technique. Like there's many ways to sell powerlifting, I think, but blood pressure isn't one of them. Yeah. The health side of it isn't sexy. So I don't think it is gets talked about and it gets overlooked.
It's a sport of extremes. So it's like everyone just all about extreme strength. And just most of the time people are like, okay, I don't care about this. Like, how do I squat while I keep my hips together? How do I do this without getting a massive injury? But they don't think about other injuries they could get, like long-term cardiovascular damage. And
the service stuff. Yeah.
I often talk about this to people. It's like a credit card. You're racking up this debt that you're going to have to pay off someday. You can be like, yeah, well, I used to deadlift 400 kilos, but now you're 80 and your joints are completely destroyed. You've already had 4 heart attacks. Yeah. You don't have to trade that. You can have good health and you can have good physiology and good blood pressure, and you can still be really fucking strong.
There's compound interest on that credit card as well.
Yeah.
Like once you fall into the debt, it's much harder to get out than it is to
massively
pay it off as it comes.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about your model on that, the beast mode to least mode, least mode to beast mode, and how that plays into powerlifting, because I feel like it directly applies into powerlifting in terms of peaking and being strong and being sympathetic, and then trying to reverse that. And we've talked about it in a much less formatted way.
Well, one of the things that you always say is that before someone is a powerlifter, they are a human and a person.
Yeah, all that kind of language. Yeah, it all comes back into that model, and having what I call like an exit plan. Like it's okay to have high blood pressure and you're coming into a comp. I would be almost weirded out if you didn't.
Yeah.
But as long as there's an exit plan, you'd be sweet. Like
Yeah,
as long as there's a plan after to go like, okay, let's fix this shit up. Same as everything really.
And if you're competing in powerlifting and you're about to get on the platform and you're not on the verge, you're not on the borderline of injuring yourself, you're probably not ready. You're probably not going to win. Like you want to try to stay as healthy as possible until it's time to get on the platform. So it's like when I talk to people about their HRV and about staying, balancing out the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, you don't want to be parasympathetic when you're stepping on stage. You want to be tight. You want to be so tight that you have like sausage hands and you can barely turn your neck. And that's what you want. You want to have to put a certain amount of weight on just to get into the bottom of your squat while you're warming up.
That was Will basically before one of his record breakers comps. I called him Buffalo Billy, just looked like a big watermelon.
When I was trying to push to 125. Yeah. And Zach's been, we've all tried to push to 125. I don't know if any of us have been relatively a decent holding 125.
Yeah.
Luke, you're probably the most successful out of the three of you boys.
In what way?
Putting the weight on.
Not in lifts.
In what way?
No. Well, let's speak about let's do that. Let's go into like your history first as an athlete, because I don't think many people would even know that you did powerlifting, and you've been a big part of it. It was a while ago now, and you've pivoted in many ways. You're on Zach's wavelength now with the weightlifting. And
the regal sport.
Not only that, but then if you want to go into like just yourself as an educator as well and talk about your vast history there.
Oh man, so
where
do we start with that? I mean, I really don't talk about it much. That I powerlifted for a long time. I started when I was 14, and I powerlifted from the age of 14 because we had a high school powerlifting team. I started then, and then I did that for 4 or 5 years, and then I got away from it for a few years and went into like bodybuilding shit because I wanted to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. Then I got tired of that. I never competed at that time. I went back in the powerlifting, but that was back when everybody was using all the supportive gear. So people would be wearing like triple denim custom suits. And I hated it. I could not stand it. I refused to lift. I was the dumbass that would buy a new shirt and I'd put it on at the meet. I had no idea how to fucking wear it. So I never got anything out of it. Yeah. And
even now people say equipped lifting is stupid.
I didn't say that.
Well, Thomas talks about it a little bit and how like if you're doing equipped stuff, and he is competing equipped.
It definitely puts up a huge barrier to entry for powerlifting, which I mean, one of the main benefits to powerlifting is it's low barrier to entry, as in grandma can come into a squat of a comp and
this is a blue collar sport.
Yeah, you can get in at any level, which is great. But if you have to put on a fucking squat suit and a bench suit and train in that and have a whole team supporting you and spotting you, it levels up that barrier. You know,
trying to stuff you into that suit like a fucking sausage. But I couldn't do it, man. I couldn't do it. I did a not meet, but a bench press contest. Almost broke my elbows because we jacked the shirt too much and the bar wouldn't go all the way down. So I lifted my head up and it dropped and the spotters didn't catch it. So I got caught in this really fucking weird position. My elbow started and they got it off me and I went, nah, I'm done.
Did a proper skull crusher.
Yeah. proper jam press to my hip.
Yeah.
How heavy was it?
I can tell you in freedom units, It was 475 pounds, I think is what it was.
Is that quick
conversion? Is that 200? That's close to 200.
212, 213.
Yeah.
No, maybe 218. Somewhere around there. I don't know. I don't have a calculator on me. I'm terrible at math.
Quick math?
I'll believe him. I'll say 212. That sounds about right.
500 is 227. So
I've got a video on YouTube I've never shown anybody where I did the 475, but before that I had dumped it in my lap. And then redid it without jacking the shirt so much. But
powerlifting, what a sport, hey?
What a sport. But then now everybody does. Most people do raw, or at least just knee wraps, and that's what when I was 14, that's what we were doing. That was back in 1992, and so we didn't like the shirts that you had. Maybe get 6 or 7 kilos out of a bench shirt. And we never wore squat suits. It was just to keep our shoulders from blowing out on a pause.
Yep.
And then when everybody got crazy with it, I was like, I'm done. I think I was like 27, 28. I was like, I'll just go back into bodybuilding. And I did that for a while.
And now you're down the Ollie lifting train.
Yeah. Which is, out of everything I've done, is the most frustrating, hardest one. I would say bodybuilding is the easiest fucking one out of all of them. If somebody says bodybuilding is hard, I don't know. The only hard part is starving yourself.
Yeah.
I think that is the hard part for sure.
Yeah, that's the only hard part. And people tell me, oh, bulking is hard. No, it's not. It's fucking easy to overeat.
Yeah.
It's so easy. Stop trying to overeat on potatoes and rice.
Yeah.
Powerlifting was hard, but in a different way. Powerlifting was scary hard. When you're walking out 300-some kilos, and oh fuck, one wrong step. But weightlifting is fucking terrifyingly hard because you're just violently ripping a bar from the floor overhead, and if you fuck up, there's no wiggle room to fuck up. You can save a shitty squat, kind of, but you can't save a shitty snatch.
I think I've seen some videos
I
think I've seen some videos of Zach walking around the gym trying to rescue a snatch.
Definitely.
Yeah, once it's in your hands above your head, you can kind of walk backwards or forward depending on how much space you have. But if you proper cock it up, it's either coming back on top of you or you're just launching yourself in the other direction.
Yeah, I don't see many Olympians walking around the platform with it, so I don't think that's the way it's meant.
Riddle me this as well. How many bad how many half decent weightlifters do you see? None. They're either fucking awful or they're fantastic. You don't see an intermediate weightlifter. They don't exist.
So where do you guys fit in that category?
Awful.
I'm still awful.
Me. Yeah.
At least you're honest about it.
Yeah.
That's right. You get there.
Getting good at weightlifting takes a long, long fucking time.
Especially when you start later. Yeah. And probably the background in powerlifting, although it would help from a pure strength perspective, probably doesn't help from a other perspectives, other qualities.
It helps from a base strength level.
Yeah.
But it doesn't help from a technique level because you're squatting a little bit different.
That's what I mean.
Things.
You're probably a little you've learned different patterns, and you probably fall back into them.
When I started doing more of the American style, which is deadlift to your chin and just pray that you can get under the bar, that's what we did, right? And so it's and jumping and stomping your feet.
Yeah,
and then
that was when the couple of times I did it when I was younger, just for fun. That was the most fun part about it. Just trying to make as much noise, bam. I don't know why. I don't know. You feel like you have to do it.
Well, it turns into this Russian tap dance.
You feel like a badass when you hear your shoes go crack. You're like, yeah. And then you go, oh, I've only got 100 kilos in the bar. That's not a whole lot. Shit.
Yeah, I think I was doing cleans. This is right back at the start of my, I would have been 20, 19 maybe. And I remember I don't even know why I was jumping. I don't even know why I was getting so high. Well, there's no point. And then I think I was just, and then I remember just making as much noise as I could
we learned from American high school football coaches on rusted ass old bars that weren't designed for this. Nice. So I got to a point where I could power clean 150, 160, but I couldn't get under it. So I could full clean 100, but I could power clean 160, which is not supposed to happen. But that was just kind of trying to deadlift the bar to my chin and then racking it.
Would you compete now, or are you just doing it as a hobby sort of training direction?
That's a very good question, and I have a very good answer. I would do it at club stuff, but because I have taken performance-enhancing drugs in the past, I wouldn't feel good about getting, even in a tested meet, even though I could pass, I still feel like I have an advantage from years of powerlifting and doing.
Is there novice comps and things like that? The way that powerlifting has a lot of novice meets?
I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah,
it depends. Dudes hanging out in the shed.
Like sometimes, like there's a gym down in Melbourne, the gym's called Control Chaos, but they run like unsanctioned meets. So there's not really novice comps, but there's non-affiliated comps.
Yeah, that's what that's what a novice comp is.
Get Brandon into it.
Yeah.
Tell his gym to start hosting some novice comps, and then we'll fly Luke down.
Awful lifters.
Maybe in
are welcome.
maybe 2 more years.
Okay. God, that's a long timeline.
That's a good timeline.
Well, you compete to win, right? I would never compete in something I didn't expect to at least place.
Do well.
Fair.
Yeah, but Mickey, don't forget as well, in powerlifting you can change your openers, but in weightlifting, once you put in the attempts you're starting with, you can't change them. Like you can't go down.
Right.
So you like lock yourself in, and if you're having a bad day, you're cocked.
Sounds like a very complicated sport.
It's
like the rise
Not really.
bar
I don't think so.
Well, it's very technical. It takes you 2 years just to get on the platform.
It's very technical.
Yeah, but the sport itself, I mean, it's like powerlifting, but 2 lifts.
Yeah, for sure. But it's just the timeline to get into that. I don't know if I'd have the patience.
Well, that's why they all start when they're fucking 10 or less.
Well, they steal them from their village.
I say
that's it.
From a timeline perspective, you could become a decent powerlifter far before you could become even an average weightlifter.
Yeah.
Because it is much more technical.
Because Zach started going down the dunk route as well. Is that a skill that you were trying to hope carry over into your ollie lifting, Zach?
No, I just thought it'd be fucking sick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we talking dunking donuts or dunking like basketballs?
Dunking basketballs.
That's funny because that's kind of part of why I wanted to do weightlifting too.
You want to dunk basketball?
Yeah, I've always been able to get like the palm touching, but I've never been able to fully dunk. And then I realized that it would help.
Figured it out. We just figured out all weightlifters' true motivation.
Just want to dunk.
Dunk.
Yeah.
But then you realize like doing trap bar jumps are probably a faster route to it, but it's not as fun as doing snatches and cleans.
Have you ever dunked a ball before?
I've dunked a little ball,
okay,
but not an actual basketball.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's a race for you guys. Dunking, I guess.
The dunk off.
Fuck weightlifting, we're dunking.
How are you still actually dunking, Zach?
I mean, after I blew out the ankle, it's coming back. I can like land again, which is nice. But
okay, I challenged him to a sprint off a couple of weeks ago, so
we can fuck the ankle harder.
Yeah, we'll fuck the ankle up and then delay the dunking.
I like it. Yeah, I like it.
Just like you said earlier, control chaos.
Yeah.
So let's go back into the health performance thing, and we briefly mentioned it there, but trying to give us like a little bit of a rundown as to how health directly and indirectly affects performance. Because I feel like when people measure their blood pressure and it's high, they're like, I can squat heavy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As in like acutely, it might not matter. Like we talked about our comps, everyone's fucking almost there. But long term, over say 10 years, how it can be a severe like impact on your performance.
I think one of the best quotes I've ever heard was Broderick Chavez. And I was at a seminar a few years ago that he was here, and I think it was Dean, was like, do your cardio rant. Do your cardio rant. And at that time, everybody's calling me like the cardio guy. I'm like, I'm not the cardio guy. I'm just saying, stop avoiding cardio. It's not going to ruin your gains. It's going to actually make you stronger and help you train harder. And I'm in the back going, oh, fuck, man.
Yeah, you don't want to get down Broderick's radar.
But then he got up and started telling everybody you need to do your fucking cardio and stop calling it cardio, call it what it is, cardiovascular respiratory training, because it loses the language is important. And he was like, you know what's really bad for performance? Dying is really terrible for performance. And I went, that's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I mean, obviously that's the extreme to it. And he deals with mostly extreme,
very extreme,
very like the most extreme of the extreme, but he's got a really good point. It's like, if you're going to compete, you're doing these things that, lifting weights, it's not natural to our bodies. Like, we're not designed to do it. We can do it, and some people are really good at it and better than most everybody else in the world, but it's still an artificial thing we're not really designed to do. We're designed to run and jump and swim and climb and things like that. We lift weights because it's fucking awesome. Yep. It's badass to be big and jacked, and it's badass to put heavy-ass weight over your head and impress people because not that many people can do it. For the same reason getting abs is really cool. Why is that the thing for guys? Guys at some point always want abs because you got to earn them. You got to earn a 400 kilo squat. You got to earn a 200 kilo squat. You can't just walk in on the street and just do that. You got to work for it.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with abs, same thing with anything else you get. But you also have to concede that what we're doing here is not the greatest thing for our joints, the pursuit of maximal strength.
I think most powerlifters are somewhat aware of that. They're like, hey, I've had people go to me, like usually like people not even involved in sport, like elderly people and that, who, and they'll try to like make themselves feel better and go like, oh, you know, you're not going to be able to walk, or your knees are going to be so sore when you're older. And I'm like, yeah, but when I'm 70, things aren't, I don't know, in my opinion, even if I sat on my ass my whole life, it's going to be just as like, I'm going to be old.
Like not using it's going to do the same thing. Right?
Yeah.
So you're kind of, so it's like you have extreme unuse or extreme high use, and somewhere in the middle is probably the best thing for it. So it's like, if we're going to do these things that we know have the potential to be deleterious if we take them too far, which is what we do with performance, we need to do things to kind of reverse that. Right. So it's like you get the guys who love lifting weights, and I think like the movement guys, the guys who are doing fucking breakdancing and the handstand shit, that's probably the most natural thing, but they're all fucking weak as shit, right? So it's like you talk to powerlifters, they're like, yeah, they can wipe their own ass, but they can't squat 400 kilos. And you're like, cool, but they can move and they feel good, right? But then you see most guys you talk to in powerlifting, at least if they have been at a high level at some point, they're like, yeah, my back's real fucking stiff when I get up. Every time they stand up, they're like, oh, fuck. I mean, I'm not even strong anymore, and I stand up from 10 hours at my desk. I'm like, fuck my back, shit. I got to do these fucking drills and McGill bullshit on the floor to get my back even feeling okay to walk to the kitchen. The same thing with like joints, blood pressure, all this stuff has to be managed somehow. And so it doesn't help to put your head in the sand and act like an ostrich and just forget about it. It's going to catch up to you if you don't do something about it at some point. But then you have, half the industry saying, oh, you don't need to do any of this stuff. It's going to fuck up your lifts. You're going to not be as strong if you do cardio. That's bullshit. If you do this or the other, that's going to fuck up your lifts. That's a lot of it's all the dose makes the poison. And if your dose is pushed too far into one area and you're not catering to the other stuff, you're going to lose that stuff, and you're going to end up lopsided in one area. So you have to learn how to divvy out your investment in different multiple baskets so that you reap the rewards of each of it. So it's like when I tell somebody to do cardio to get their blood pressure down, they go, well, it's going to make me weaker. I'm not asking you to run a marathon. I'm asking you to do like 20 or 30 minutes of like, just get on a fucking treadmill and incline walk. Is that hard? Well, that's really tiring. Then you're really fucked. Like you actually need to do it now.
Yeah.
To extend on that point as well, a lot of people, once they do cross that precipice of, okay, I'm kind of fucked now, they feel like the solution is, I'll just stop. And then they believe that stopping the thing that's pushing them forward will pull them back, but it kind of just stops where it is, and it just stays there and or gets worse because they ain't doing nothing. It's not a solution to just stop having the input. You need something to pull the input back to where you kind of came from.
Yeah.
100%. But you were asked like with the least mode to beast mode stuff, because this has evolved over time and it's gotten I don't know if it's miscommunicated or misinterpreted, but it's like people look at least mode meaning like you train like a pussy. That's not what that means.
Zach has another suggestion at the end.
Yeah. Like we could flip it now. Cuck mode to fuck mode.
What is it?
Cuck mode to fuck mode. Like,
I like that.
Like someone who likes watching their missus get pounded while they're in the same room. And then
I would say put that on shirts, but my wife would be so mad. She'd be like, that's not good for muscle nerds.
No, not on
But
brand.
you can make it on your own shirts, because I mean,
That
like,
could be,
just behind the back, start selling merch at the back of it.
Oh, God.
car boot sale.
Yeah, like you go to a seminar and then she's out the front and you're at the back dealing shirts.
Then she sees it on Instagram, like, where'd these come from? I don't know. One of our students must have made that. I mean,
Blame Zach for it.
Yeah, well, if you don't take it, we're going to steal it. But
where the fuck were we?
As you were. And explaining the continuum.
But it's like, just to give you a background of where the whole terminology came from, is a friend of mine, Zach Trowbridge from the States. We were sending each other these videos where these guys are like, oh, beast mode, and they were training like absolute pussies. I'm like, this isn't beast mode. He goes, yeah, it sounds like more like least mode. And I went, I'm going to write that down. So I wrote it down. And later I started thinking about it, where that could fit in with something. And I went, all right, if everybody thinks they're training like beasts, and we see people with higher blood pressure, high resting heart rate, fucked up sleep, fucked up joints, maybe what they do need to do is some more least mode, which now we need to define what that is. And part of that is just maybe altering the amount of intensity or the amount of total volume you're getting. So maybe doing least effective dose of everything. Like what's the, even like Mike Israel talking about like minimal effective volume or maximal recoverable volume. If we go, okay, what is maximal beast volume and what's the minimal least volume that I need to actually keep progressing? But then I can also put my eggs in different baskets to get better. Mm-hmm. And then when I go back to beast mode, everything feels better. I've recovered and now I've hit PRs. Yeah. And so lately what I've looked at too, doing the weightlifting, I kind of went from that American style and said, well, who has the most medalists in the world? The Chinese. So I went to a Chinese coach, and I had a Chinese coach start writing my programming just because I wanted to see how they did it and what the difference in the way they lifted was and why it's so economical and so efficient. One of the things I found was they do a lot of submaximal work. Like they do a shit ton of work, but it's a lot of sets, not that many reps, and stupidly low volume. And so we started to integrate some of that in. We're just like, okay, instead of going in and hitting like a 3x3, why don't you just do a 10x3, but do it at like somewhere around like 60 to 70% and just use the volume to create the stimulus. So you take the pressure off the joint, so you take the pressure off the heart, you take the pressure off the circulatory system. We find that works really well. It's just hard to get people to understand that you don't have to lift at like 1, 2, 3 rep maximums to progress. And you don't have to do a shit ton of stimulatory reps for that to happen. You can overcome that if you give it enough volume and focus on your technique.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find, so the hard thing with that, like, that we talk about is like, I don't know what kind of percentage you're talking about for 10x3, like 60, 70, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Like that kind of, like 4 or 5 reps from failure or something like that.
Don't forget as well that the percentages are a bit fucked up of weightlifting.
Yeah.
I'm talking more powerlifting, but yeah.
Yeah, because part of it too is because the weightlifting's faster. Your main vector is acceleration, not the weight. So then you have to you start thinking. We could throw about a bunch of stuff like looking at like velocity-based training and things like that, and saying, okay, well, I'm going to focus. If I'm a power lifter and I want to relate to that, I need to focus on moving the bar as fast as possible out of the hole, right? So then you get a push band, or you get what's the new one? I got the flex device. You saw me using that in here that one time, and start using that as training loads and saying, well, I'm going to, instead of using mass as my main vector, I'm going to use acceleration and try to equalize those two. Yeah. So that I take some of the stimulus off the joint, stimulus off the heart, and then just drive that into actually accelerating the bar and focus on more technique-based stuff for a while.
Yeah, because with our approach, with the powerlifting side, obviously completely different. We're not a speed sport.
Yeah,
it's not when I talk about skill with the powerlifts, usually I'm talking high end, because getting under 1 RM is very different from getting under 60%. Like they're, in my opinion, almost complete. I would always categorize them different lifts, like they're the same fundamentals, but there's no way you can challenge it in the same way. It's definitely a skill to lift really heavy shit. And my argument was always kind of like, it's just not the same. Like it's just not the same. It's just not the same thing.
Just like you and I have had talks about certain treatment modalities and things you would do to make yourself feel better when you're not training, but you can't do that when you put 300 kilos in your back. It all kind of goes out the window.
Yeah.
Right. But when we look at
well, there's other attributes that you said.
How do you marry these two things up together, right? So it's like how many total high end work sets are you going to get in a workout? Like what's the normal that people would get?
Just of the skill list of SBD, usually just a few.
Yeah, so 3 top end sets or so.
Yeah. If you're doing well.
Yeah. So
would you agree, Zach?
I'd say not more than 5.
Yeah,
not more than 5. And you've got to look at that between what would a beginner do versus someone, say, at your level.
Yeah,
because that's going to be totally different, right?
Yeah, because like obviously, if they're fucking heavy even if it is relatively easy for you, if it's still fucking heavy, like it's going to accumulate a bit more fatigue. And then once you get to a certain point of fatigue, everyone's a little bit different, but get to a point where you're a little bit fucked, and then you're not getting any more skill out of it just because you're like, you're fucked.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? So,
but if we look at something like, you say somebody has rampant blood pressure, what's going to happen if they keep hitting 3x3 at, say, an 85%?
Yeah.
You see? So it's like, you might think, well, is it going to be conducive to try to push through it and just pray that my blood pressure and heart rate goes down? Or what if I put 2 to 3 weeks of this in and I just say, well, I'll just do 9 sets of 3 at, say, 75% instead of 3x3 at 85, let my cardiovascular system catch up, and then jump back in and see what happens. Because 3-4 weeks, is that going to make anyone's max go down or their skill deteriorate?
No. I was thinking a much longer period than that for sure.
In a lot of cases, they do need longer periods. Depends on how bad you get it. But if someone just kept marching forward and didn't insert those kind of least mode weeks, as we'll call it, or those least mode phases, you could conceivably have periods where you said, okay, I'm going to start, let's say how long your cycle is going to be. Maybe you're doing 16, 20 weeks of a prep.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, I get in 6 weeks and all of a sudden I see my blood pressure changing, but it's not bad. But then by week 8, man, my blood pressure is getting real fucked up and I'm feeling tired and I don't feel like I'm training. My joints starting to hurt. My heart rate's going. My sleep's all fucked up. I've got digestive issues or whatnot.
Yeah.
I love that you point to Zach for that.
I do appreciate it.
But it's like, is it going to derail you that much to say, let me just take 2 weeks and just work on skill development and just do
absolutely.
And let everything try to catch up.
Frame it as a deload to people and they would understand that.
Yeah. And maybe that's the semantics we need to use is, well, we're going to use a deload so that they don't think it's some type of pussy week, time to slack off.
Cuck week. Yeah.
Cuck week.
I reckon that's going to take off after this.
Yeah, for sure.
Alternating periodization, cuck phase, fuck phase.
You buy my book. Yeah, we've done.
Give
we've
me
talked
12
about
weeks.
similar. Like for us, it was more like it's very similar. The same overarching principles and thought action, just slightly different way of programming it. Is in like minimum effective dose of skill in an off season or during a restoration phase or whatever you want to call it, with a lot more variation for joint and for all the rest of the benefits that come with it, and inherently a lot less, usually like a lot less weight comes with that. And usually we're using constraints like like front squats, I don't know, whatever it is to like limit that further. And the volume dosing is much more in that way, just like pure minimum and then lots of other stuff. And then obviously like in a prep, it'll be flipped. It'll be like maximal recoverable SBD skill work stuff that's going to actually drive those forward. And then enough of just a small dosage of that other stuff to kind of keep you feeling all right.
Yeah, 100%. So I think too, like now that velocity-based training, like over the last like 6 or 7 years, has gotten more and more popular,
more accessible. I think
it's more. Yeah, it's cheaper.
Way cheaper.
Definitely cheaper. You don't have to pay $3,000 for a GymAware or Tendo unit now. You can. I've got that. I think it was like $500 for the whole package for that flex device.
The disco thing.
The disco ball, with the lasers. Right?
It's special.
But that's a good. I mean, to me, that's a good way of like really individualizing how much weight you need on the bar and how much weight you need that day, as long as you stay in the parameter how fast the bar needs to go, and what we know about bench squat and deadlift still being a stimulus for like high level maximal strength. Yeah,
I've always thought about, I haven't played with it at all, so I have absolutely no validity to these statements. But before somebody comes at me, people, when they get into VBT, people get really,
they get really weird.
They get super, like, this is the way, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've always thought it like, it'd be a really good way for getting instant feedback on somebody's fatigue or recovery.
Yeah.
Like if they're moving at a weight a certain, like way less this week, like that would be really good instant feedback, as opposed to waiting for the more lagging metrics, like for them to tell you, hey, I'm feeling a bit shit.
Yeah. I think you get instantaneous, this is going to be a good workout, or this workout needs to be tailored a little bit different today, because you might go in, like, let's say, I haven't been using it a lot lately, but let's say last week, same session, I go in and I hit 5 reps and the average is 5-8 meters per second or whatever. I come in today and I do 1 rep and I'm like, that average is way off. Then maybe I need to take the weight down and then maintain the speed, right? So you can manipulate variables like that, which are really good.
Yes, to get some sort of stimulus.
To make sure you're still getting at least an equal type of stimulus without overdoing the stimulus or overdoing the exposure to the stimulus.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I was thinking of more of like a cap tool. Like, hey, if you start to get real shitty, pull it back.
Yeah.
And then combining that with RPE or some sort of subjective measure as well to help kind of.
I don't like RPs.
Why not?
I don't like RPs or reps in reserve.
You don't trust people? Or what's the thing?
I don't trust people to know where they're at. That's one thing. I think the bar speed is the bar speed. So as long as your device is good, the bar speed and you're pushing as hard as you can, the bar speed is more constant.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely it's obviously it's an objective measure. You can't fucking bullshit it.
Yeah.
Unless you're trying to be slow, I guess.
Yeah.
But
I don't want to train hard today. Oh, that's heavy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But we've always found with RPE that the subjectivity of it is super useful in telling me, hey, like I'm feeling shit. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Some people are just fucking beasts and can push through things. I guess I don't know. I haven't played with it, but I've always thought having a subjective measure in there alongside an objective measure, whether it is a set load percentage, a range, or in that case something like that, was always
what about
a good tackling, like a merging of the.
So we'll take a device out of the equation, right? Because not everybody's going to have access to a device, but bar speed is subjectively and slightly objectively measurable from the eye, from the way it feels.
I feel fast today.
Yeah. So what I tend to tell my clients, I'll tell them how many slower reps I want them to get to. Like, dude, when you feel 1 rep start to slow down, that's it.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's probably 3 or 4 reps in reserve.
Yep.
If you have 1.25 or 1.5 seconds, you feel that rep doesn't feel the same as the other ones. Yeah, you might have 3 or 4 in there. Depends on how good your technique is when you get tired. Or we might take them to the point where you get like 1 slow shit rep, and once your technique breaks down, we stop.
You know what I've been doing a little bit more lately as well is almost like an old. You would have read John Meadows' programs and books back when you know how he had RPE, I think, in there, and he had like a percentage in there as well. But he used to do things in a way that I thought was always so fucking cool, but time consuming, which was to like write a full description of what the set should look like.
Yeah.
So he'd write like, I want you to fucking die on the last set. Like I want you to be crawling off the machine or whatever. Or on contrary to like, I want this to be like a smooth, clean rep. Like as soon as you feel like you're breaking down or anything, like a slow rep or whatever, let's pull it back or whatever. You know, like the intent was conveyed through like a descriptive manner. And I've started doing that a lot more lately with people who are a little bit shitter with judging RPE because the intent is really what I want from it. If it's a skill exercise, if it's a pause squat that I'm trying to teach you how to get better at a squat, it's like, I want it to be clean. I don't want you to fucking grind out a pause squat or whatever. Like, there's no point in that. If it's a leg extension, I want you to, I want you'd be hardly able to walk after it.
Yeah.
You know, so like, I always loved his thing as well. So many ways we've gotten so far off track here.
Yeah, we're totally
there's so many ways to
there was no track to begin with.
That's the podcast though. That's what we do. Yeah, there's so many ways to prescribe like an intensity or like what you want describe the intent behind what you want from your set, objective and subjective. And I always find it so interesting. This, you know, people, it obviously, or they all work.
Yeah,
you know. So
I do a lot of descriptions like that, and that's where I got it from. Is John Meadows? I got it.
He's the king. Yeah,
but I only do that like if there's like very specific instructions of how I want stuff done.
Yeah.
So, because man, if you did that on every exercise,
I'm not doing that.
Shit.
No, not unless the template's like him.
Yeah.
But if I know somebody's a little bit, I don't know that they like to push the numbers a little bit, then stuff like that I find can convey a message much easier than a number.
Most of the people that I still actively coach, I still coach about 24 people online. And they're almost exclusively other coaches, and you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
You'll either get the fucking cowboy who you can see that his squat's going completely sideways and he's still trying to hold that shit together, and you got to try to tell him how to dial it back. But I'll tell you what, most coaches, and if you're one of my clients or one of the coaches, listen to this, they're pussies, man. They don't train hard at all. Like my clients have learned to train hard, but when I first get another personal trainer or a coach, they don't train hard. Their last rep looks identical to the first rep. And I'm like, you just did 12 reps. They all look identical. You should have at least 2 reps in there that start to look a little different. Like you're not even sweating at the end of your workout. This is why your body's not changing.
Yeah, these are good descriptions. Put them in the program. Yeah. You should be dying. You should be sweating at the end of this session.
I want you to have a slight bit of anal prolapse at the end of this leg extension.
Fucking oath. Yeah. I love how our conversations always go down these sort of routes.
I would like to see a full hemorrhoid by the end of this training week. I don't care on which exercise, but I want some intestines coming out.
Yeah.
My insurance does not cover this, however. Sign the waiver.
You can still push anal prolapse back in. Hemorrhoid too. You can still kind of shove that in maybe.
Jeez. Christ. That's some real descriptive shit, you know.
That's
don't want to put that in the program. Zach, do you want to try and get us back on track, or did you...
Where the fuck were we? I mean,
we were on a continuum of beast mode.
The amount that we discussed blood pressure, the next thing we had in it was just out of all the markers. You mentioned HRV, you mentioned blood pressure. Which of them is the most telling for how far into beast mode someone is? I feel like you've answered the question already, but which is most telling?
Well, you've got to look at it from a couple of different perspectives. Which ones are things that I like to look at things, what can be taken every day with minimal effort and what needs to be done sporadically. Like if you have trackable tech, which most of my clients wear, right? I can get resting heart rate, peak heart rate, performance heart rate. If they wear it when they sleep, I can get a long-term HRV after a few weeks. And then blood pressure as long as they have a blood pressure cuff. It's like the number one easiest thing is going to be heart rate, because if you have a cell phone or a smartphone, you can take your heart rate with your finger. If you have trackable tech, you can do that. If you got trackable tech, you can usually get a good HRV reading. If someone has higher blood pressure, I'd like them to get a blood pressure cuff, like spend the $100 and get a really nice blood pressure cuff from the chemist.
Yeah, these ones are super cheap.
Has
the cord, but you can get the non-corded ones, the wrist ones for big people even.
Yeah.
You've got the Omron arm cuff one,
like the HEM 7500, the black one.
Yeah. I don't know the model number.
Yes, that one.
I'm a technology guy.
But yeah, that one's easy.
But you'll see, like some things will are modifiable faster than others. So things go negative faster than others, and some things go positive. So if you're tracking HRV is a really good one that will immediately change quickly. That's probably your fastest one to change, especially if it's in a negative manner. So you could have great HRV, have one shitty night's sleep, or have a few drinks before you go to bed, and your HRV crashes. And it's important to then have clients understand what your number looks like and how you feel the next day, because everyone has their own personal HRV reading, and that has to do with your genetics, your age, what you're doing, how fit you are, how unfit you are. So you have to find a good range of HRV for somebody and say, okay, is that range age appropriate? Let's look at the data. Okay, is that modifiable? If you can, let's try to work on getting that range at least a little bit higher and try to get it in as healthy a position as possible, depending on what your demand is. Like if you're a world champion powerlifter, your HRV is never going to be like a fucking marathon runner. Like it's never going to be that high. So you can't use that. Or if you're, 250 pounds and you squat 400 kilos, like I don't know why I'm using freedom units and metric, but if you have to be reasonable with what you're trying to do with life, right? So for Gen Pop, I always say Gen Pop can't get aerobic enough. And if they're not competing and they're not in a strength sport and they don't care about that, they need to be strong enough for what they want to do. They need to be mobile enough, and they need to be pain-free enough, and they can probably never get aerobic enough, because out of every piece of literature, high VO2 max has been shown to be the number one thing to lower all-cause mortality and give you a long life where you're probably not going to be crippled if you don't get in a like really bad accident. And that's all going to be based on maximal heart rate and average heart rate and resting heart rate. Yeah. But the heart rate is pretty transient too. So if you have HRV and heart rate, which they're both associated with each other, you can get a pretty good picture where somebody is.
Yeah.
Then if you can combine that with blood pressure, that's even better.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, and they're all, like you said, pretty easy to measure.
And they're all well researched. It's not like people are just pulling numbers out of their ass. There's a lot of data on heart rate. And I think some of the, if you asked me to pinpoint the best resting heart rate for people, I think you would be real fucking surprised at what the literature says, based on longevity and mortality.
You'd know, but I remember in your hypertension course, like it's like, I think most people would go like, oh yeah, I'll do a hypertension course, get through that easy in a few hours or whatever. But your one, I remember the amount of data and the amount of advice, like the length of the course was huge. I forget what it was, but it was massive. And then it there's a lot more into it than what people would expect.
Yeah. Because you've got to talk about, you got to talk about the data. You got to talk about why it's important, how to measure it and all that stuff. Then, okay, how do we modify it? Because you have to have practical, applicable things to do. So,
what's your approach if somebody just doesn't give a fuck? As in, like, I'm a powerlifter, I squat 400, and then you come up and go like, you're also, looking by this, like you're also fucking going to die in 20 years. Some people in powerlifting and in strength sports who are pushing the extreme and are at the top of their game and do feel like they're above everyone else will be like, they'll either like put their head in the sand or just not give a fuck at all, or they'll just like completely like play naive. Like, how do you get that person? Like, what's your strategy to get that person to give a fuck? Do you talk about performance? Like, how do you get that? I mean, or you just don't care?
I don't give a fuck. I'm not their parent. Like, I mean, look, you either want to get your shit together or you don't. And if you're happy, like being the gym hero in your 20s and 30s, and you don't care if it fucks you up in your 60s, just come back around so I can say I told you so. Yeah. Like, that's all I'm going to. I had a friend that I think he totaled elite in 3 different weight classes, and he was going for his 4th. And I mean, that's crazy. That's fucking insane. And I told him, I think we were in our late 20s, and I go, you're going to fucking die in your mid 30s. He goes, at least I'll die in a big box with lots of trophies. I'm like, okay, cool.
No one gives a fuck.
No one cares. Like, except you and your mom. And it wasn't even his job. He was like a tradie. So it's not like he was using that as a platform for marketing, gyms, training. He didn't train anybody. So like, it was just a personal pride. And he was like, had this big Spartan 300 mentality and didn't give a shit.
You can't help someone that doesn't want to be helped themselves at the end of the day. Like I always say, and this is kind of off topic a little bit, but when someone comes on board with my nutrition side, the first thing I say to them is like, we'll work together if you have a willingness to make change. If you don't have a willingness to make change and the desire to do that, then you got to go find someone else that's willing to take your money and waste their time. Because
I'm so glad you say. I say the same shit. Like most of my clients, they pay for nutrition, they pay for training, they pay for all this stuff. I don't manage a lot of people's nutrition because they won't do it.
Yeah.
So they'll go in and train. They'll log everything. They'll send me their videos. So 90% of what I'm doing every day is watching videos, correcting shit, and programming because they won't address the nutrition. And then they'll ask me 4 or 5 weeks later, should we change our macros? I'm like, well, maybe you should do the macros you had the last 4 or 5 weeks. That way we see where you go. And then we'll see if we need to change anything at that point. And they're like, oh.
People like the idea of it, but they're not willing to do the work.
And it's funny. They'll want you to constantly change shit when they haven't done the first thing you told them to do. Like
it's the same thing with like going back to the hypertension side of it as well. Like they like the idea of not having purple skin and feeling relatively good, but they're not willing to do the, 2 to 3 20-minute low impact sort of exercises to get them at least progressing and on that trajectory of restoring health.
How many times you tell somebody to get a blood pressure cuff and they're like, I can't afford it. I'm like, well, you can afford a gram of Tren a week when you need about a quarter of that.
This is less than $100. So I mean,
it's like you can afford thousands of dollars worth of gear, why and a new weightlifting wraps and all kinds of shit. Why can't you just spend the money on that?
You go out and spend all your money on pizzas and burgers and things like that over the course of a week or a month, and it adds up pretty quick as well.
But you can see how people fall into this, right? Like you can see how people like don't give a fuck or like they turn the blinkers on or whatever it is because they are doing well at their sport and that's what matters to them at the time. Like I don't think I blame anybody for it because like I can see that if like your life, if that's like the main thing that you've achieved in life and like the thing people look up to you for, it's really I can see that mentality where you're like, this is more important to me right now, and you like lean into it. So I get it. Like,
I think it's a lot of misinformation too, because if you think about it, like powerlifting is probably the most popular now, as I've seen it at any time. Like I started when I was in high school. That was a common Texas high school thing, right? If you go to the Midwest, you go to the Northeast, it's all wrestling. We're all powerlifting, and we're really fucking good at it. And so where do you learn powerlifting? These old bros from the 60s and 70s. So you go in a powerlifting gym, and you're learning from guys that were, really good in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And they still say, well, if you do any cardio, it's going to make you weaker. So they're like, let's do... Nah, you walk 3,500 steps today. That's too many steps. You need to get that down to 2,500 steps. And they're like, oh, the way you can't get the way you get big, you got to massively stuff food in your face. I'm like, you're eating way more food than you actually need. Like you need enough food to grow. More food on top of that isn't necessarily going to make you better, but what it will do is drive inflammation and drive blood pressure and drive blood sugar and drive a lot of other shit that's going to fuck you up in the long term. So there's a lot of guys passing information that we now know is not correct, but they still hold on to that. So they get scared to make that change, because if you were squatting 400 kilos and I told you, look, you really need to do a little cardio to get your blood pressure down. What if that takes 10 kilos off my squat? Now I'm no longer one of the strongest guys in the world,
It might do in the short term, but that's where you're always got to be looking big picture, right? In 12 to 18 months or whatever, you could be squatting 410 kilos because now your work capacity and your ability to recover and blah, 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 blah has now significantly improved.
Bingo.
And powerlifting is not a short-term sport. Like Will said it, there's no shortcuts, like you have to...
Even the shortcuts are not as shortcutty as you think. Like even going taking a gram of Adrenaline feels like a shortcut right now, but it is long term.
Like it only does so much.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of things you got to take care of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One thing I mentioned earlier that when I was doing your hypertension course and stuff, that there are some pretty scary facts.
Yeah.
Like not even for powerlifters, for anybody. Like if you know blood pressure is a thing and you've seen the ads, silent killer, blah, blah, blah. But until you know some of these numbers, you just don't know. You're not aware. Like I know there's many of them, but what's your scary? What do you think's the number that most people should be aware of? Because I can think of a couple. Is there any big hitters that hit people?
The thing I think that's the scariest out of all of it is that it is a silent killer. Like you could have all these issues, and if you're not measuring anything, you have no idea. You could just fucking drop dead one day. I think that's a very scary thing, because again, a lot of people don't put their head in the sand and they won't think about it. And then you take their blood pressure. I had a guy at one of our courses, his blood pressure was 210 over 100.
Yeah, and he looked relatively healthy, or
you could see the signs.
I could see it, but most people he was getting ready. I think he eventually won. He won a really huge European, Mr. Universe thing, right? So he looked about as what you would want somebody to look like at that level of bodybuilding. And a lot of people that couldn't recognize, looking at his skin and looking at the color of his skin and the quality of his skin and the way he was breathing, they would just look at him and be like, man, he's a fucking beast. That at one point I've seen this guy squat 140. There's a video on it online, 145 kilo back squat for 42 reps in a row.
Yeah, so he's not unfit in an endurance way.
In a strength specific performance way, no, but he's passing out in the middle of class. It's 11 in the morning and he's passed out in the back of class. I'm like, I'm not that fucking boring. Jesus.
Yeah.
And he's sleeping all day. And
I would definitely say that you're one of my favorite presenters, to be honest, as well.
Thank you.
I think there are a couple as well of facts, if your blood pressure is, I don't know, about 150 over 100 and you're a 35-year-old male, then your life expectancy was
67 years old or something like that.
Yeah. That's pretty fucking scary.
Yeah.
I think most guys, they heard that and then they went and checked their blood pressure. And if it was around that number, you'd be like, fuck, I don't feel unhealthy. You know what I mean? It's pretty rough, but I don't want to be all doom and gloom. So let's talk quickly about the opposite direction. So if you apply the least mode, if you go I've heard you, I've been a beast for too long, or I've been a fuck for too long, and I really want to get some cuck about me.
You've been a fuck boy for too long.
Then, yeah, I really want to live that cuck life. Then, and I go and apply all of your methodology, all the nutrition, all the cardio, all the lifting, all these different metrics. How quickly and like all the long term, you're going to die in 20 years type stuff. Like how much of that can I reverse? Like
it's quick, but it also depends on where in your life and how far you've let it go. Like if you're listening to this and you're 28 and you're competing and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go take my blood pressure. Your blood pressure is like 155 over say 95. Okay, great. You're at least you're 28. Like you can get this down really quickly. If you're 68, we got another different conversation we have to have, right? But most of the time, and you have to understand that some of this stuff is chemical in nature, some of it's mechanical in nature, right? So the chemical stuff is easy to take care of really quickly. I can work on stress management techniques. I can start getting a little bit more aerobically fit, try to get more sleep. That's the big one that people want to avoid. They don't sleep enough. That's probably the biggest thing that will change your health metrics, especially blood pressure and heart rate and HRV, is
quality-wise as well for the apnea sleep guys out there.
Yeah, wear your CPAP machine. That's a big one. But like a lot of it too is people talk about quality of sleep, but then they only lay in bed for 5 or 6 hours. It's like even if you're not sleeping with high quality, stay in bed longer. Like if you have to try to be unconscious for 10 hours to get 6 or 7 hours of good quality sleep, do it.
Yep.
Right. And if you're bad at sleeping, practice. Yep. Practice sleeping just like you would your squat,
3 sets.
But the sleeping's the big one. But if you take care of a lot of this stuff, the chemical side, which you're looking at things like adrenaline and noradrenaline, that can be dropped really quickly because a lot of that is just as much emotional and psychological as it is actual physical. So if you were to dial down your training a little bit and then try to get more sleep and then try to change your perception of how you react, try to become non-reactive to stressful events, which is another skill you have to work on, you can drop heart rate, blood pressure in 3 or 4 weeks like it's nothing. The problem is a lot of people think they're out of the woods at that point.
That's what I was going to say.
Stop.
Yeah.
But we have to change the morphology of the heart as well. And what I teach in the course is like with powerlifters, you're doing a lot of efforts where you're having to brace. So you Valsalva maneuver, you're bracing, you're creating a lot of internal vascular pressure, which then the heart has to try to counteract. So you start damaging the endothelial lining, you start getting hardening of the arteries get really stiff. The heart has to then grow and get more muscular in order to perfuse blood properly. So now your blood pressure is rising. So you have very non-pliable vascular system. So your body goes, well, I'll just make a bigger pump. Mm-hmm. So the musculature of the heart gets a lot thicker. Now, one of the problems, like this is a good compensation. The body is very good at compensating. It's very good at like trying to work around dumb shit we do to ourselves, but it does have its limits. So as your heart gets thicker, the chamber that's holding the blood doesn't expand. And in a lot of cases, it gets smaller. So now the heart has to beat more rapidly in order to keep blood pushing. So now you have high heart rate. Now you have high blood pressure. And now you get non-variable heart rate as well. So you lose heart rate variability. And now you're bathing in adrenaline to try to keep your heart pumping, and everything just gets worse and you start plaquing and eventually you have a heart attack or a stroke or an embolism or something like that.
Yeah.
So if you start taking action, then in a few weeks, if the Mercury's in retrograde and the moon and the stars align, a lot of your like blood pressure stuff will drop a little bit, but you have to keep working on it. I reckon within the first 3 to 5 weeks, most people should see a pretty big improvement, but it's going to take probably 12 to 16 weeks to solidify that because we have to change the structure of the heart and what the heart's doing. We have to open that internal cavity a little bit more, which means you have to do stuff where you're constantly pushing blood in there, which is cardio.
Which still isn't, I mean, to me, like that doesn't seem like a really long time.
No.
Like, that's not, if you turn around and said, it's going to take 3-4 years for you to really make any sort of change, most people be like, really? Fuck, I don't know if I could be fucked.
Yeah.
But 12, 16 weeks, that's a prep. And most people can deal with their joints hurting and their lives sucking for the sake of a prep and to hit big numbers. So, and we only recommend a comp usually once to 2 to 3 times max per year anyway, just because there's other shit to work on.
That's the thing. Like you come off the platform, you're already probably like your joints hurt, you're sick and tired of lifting
Everyone's
heavy.
actually looking forward to doing things like that is what we see most often. You got to utilize that. That's
the perfect time. Just spend a couple of 4-week blocks working on stuff you don't normally work on your split squats, work on lengthened position stuff, work on lower intensity loading, do some cardio. Right? Start looking at your diet. Say, I know everybody goes, oh, you got to eat more salt. Man, I've never seen somebody with a salt deficiency. That book, Salt Fix, has fucked every personal trainer's idea of salt. You ever seen a salt deficiency in anyone?
No.
No, I see a lot of potassium deficiencies because people won't eat plucking plants. But a lot of, especially in powerlifting, what's a really good bulking food for powerlifters?
Macca's
and pizza.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, boy.
Yeah. So it's like,
gonna get my post-workout fix.
Yeah. Especially in the bigger weight classes where it's like, well, I can just bloat the fuck up and turn myself into a big fucking water sausage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point, it's probably a good idea to maybe cut weight a little bit, do a little bit of cardio for part of that, get some sweat going on, get some healthier foods back in. And then give everything a break and see if like a good 8 weeks gets all that stuff realigned. And then you can start slowly turning the amplitude of your training back up.
The amount of conversations that we've had following the recent Pro Raw comp that Will's been at from our own clients, that it's like, man, I just feel so much better. Like my sleep's the best that it's ever been, and this is the best that it's ever been. And it's okay that recognizing for that short period of time during a comp prep, those qualities are probably going to degrade ever so slightly, but it's about knowing that they are short term, it's not permanent, and that those are the first qualities that we aim to improve following competition so that you continue to feel good and can then have the desire to compete again down the track. Because if you're constantly driving that home, over and over and over again, people, they tap out from powerlifting pretty quickly as well, because they're just fucked all the time.
Yeah. It's a brutal sport.
Yeah, for sure.
Long term.
Yeah.
The hardest thing about powerlifting isn't the first prep, isn't the second prep. It's the 10th and the 15th and the 10 years into it prep.
Yeah.
It's hard to do for a long time. That's
But it's
half
a
our mentorship
sport.
is about longevity and how to be, because that's the hard part in my eyes.
See, the next thing is when you're done with powerlifting, it's weightlifting.
Yeah. That's
Dunking.
Dunking.
Dunking, yeah.
Dunking donuts.
Cucking and dunking. Yeah.
All the qualities. All the qualities. Sex appeal right there.
Cuck, dunk, fuck.
Well, that's it. You just pay somebody else to do the dunk for you. Now you've cucked your dunk. Beautiful.
Delightful. All right.
Zach, you had one more thing in here to talk about before
I'll round us out on a solid laugh. I mean, unless the person died, then it might not be funny. But
God.
Maybe.
Have you ever had to pull the plug on someone who went above beast mode? Like someone who just like so close to death ethically you could not continue to tell them to continue training.
Extra you can always do something though. You can't just say like just do nothing.
Yeah, but I mean more so like if they're competing and their blood markers come and it's like comps in 2 weeks, but their blood pressure's higher than I was going to make a priest joke, but
what?
Have you ever had to pull somebody?
I think you guys are probably both talking about one person in particular.
No.
Okay.
No, I've had people definitely like at the end of the spectrum where I'm like, dude, your blood work and all the metrics that we've taken here are pretty bad. But I think, we've had that conversation and it's just what we were talking about before. It's just like, hey, all I can do is have that conversation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because I think it would be I don't think I've not with any powerlifters because it would be like talking to a fucking brick wall.
Yeah.
There's no way. I've had that conversation with a lot of bodybuilders.
Yeah.
A lot of bodybuilders because which I don't train. I think I have one bodybuilder I still train because I just can't, like we talking in the car, I just can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But
stress. It's making your blood pressure go up.
Well, I actually got to the point where people would call me because they were scared of their health 6-7 weeks before they got on stage, and they also still look like shit. And their coach was just like, just do more drugs. Like that was his big thing. We'll just hammer more drugs. I'm like, drugs are not going to fix this.
It's similar in powerlifting, because like once you are so far down that rabbit hole, like you're not responding to training very well anyway. Maybe you get a little bit of skill here from just doing the thing more, but like you're not getting true adaptations. You push nutrition as far as you can, like you're as big as you can. You're a water buffalo, and drugs is really the metric that you got that still works.
Anadrol,
because you can just I can just take more. Like this is the easy one. I'll just up the dose, and of course, like you start like there's lesser returns from it at a certain point for sure, but like it still fucking works, and so like that's the dial that they can still turn, right? So like that's what people end up doing, and it is scary, but no,
we've definitely turned people away,
stern
conversations, and nudged people along outside of our coaching because they were pushing the bucket a little bit too hard than what we were like. I've turned people away because of like constantly wanting to go down a weight class, and I just said to him, I was like, I'm not willing to help you cut weight, because there's massive health and this is a completely different conversation with weight cutting and things like that I'm just like, I'm not willing to help you lose 15% of your body fat body weight every single time you want to compete. So I think you go find someone else.
Well, let's make it more specific then, and go like, what's the highest blood pressure you've seen that wasn't acute, like resting, chilled?
Yeah, I think that 210 over 100, 110 is the highest I've seen. Yeah.
But I can imagine bodybuilders push pretty hard.
Yeah.
That'd be up there. I think there are some heavyweight powerlifters or strongmen that would rival it, but it's just these sports as well. It's these niche sports that don't earn you anything as well. Like all of the other like real sports where you get paid to do it, I can't imagine them being quite as bad either. So it's.
Well, I've had a lot of people we've saved their lives with some of this information.
Yeah.
And our students too. Like we get messages all the time that people done the hypertension course had all their clients do their blood pressure, and then sending 3 or 4 of their clients in and immediately having to get stents put in because they were almost dead.
Yeah, crazy.
The first guy I had that happen to was, it's got to be 25 years ago. I was training a guy, and this is before I knew about any of this stuff. And he was like, man, my legs feel really heavy. Your legs feel heavy. We haven't trained legs in a few days. That's weird. So I went and looked it up, and I was like, okay, that's one sign of like failing heart, congestive heart failure. So I told him, he went to the doctor. They had to put stents in. He had almost every artery was 98% blocked.
Fuck.
So,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's got to have like a bit of a feel good moment as well. Like in amongst the whole like fear of it, it's like I've literally just saved this person's life.
It does, until you do a leg day, and the next day you're like, my legs feel really heavy. Oh my God, I've got congestive heart failure. Oh my God.
Well, I think in Australia, it's just as well on that. At least in Queensland, I don't know how the other states are differently, but we get a subsidized every 2 years. You can get a heavily subsidized heart
ECG.
ultrasound, ECG, and I'm always recommending it for the guys who are maybe pushing the limits a little bit more.
I didn't know that. I just got my PR, so I can finally get something out of my
there
taxes.
you go.
Yeah,
I get myself a free Echo. Yeah,
it's
fantastic.
not free, but it's
subsidized.
Largely subsidized.
They help you. Yeah, once every 2 years. So go get it done.
How much does it cost to subsidize?
Because
the last one I had was $500, I think it was.
Yeah, I think it might be
it's still a couple
$100 or
$100, I think.
$200.
It's not near that bad.
But again, if it's one of those things that's going to add 10 years to your life, because now you can actually start at what's $200.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, fuck it. Yeah, 100% worth it. It's nice to, even if there's nothing wrong, to go like, that's a bit nice to hear. Yeah. It's worth a couple $100 just to hear that, you know. Yeah. But anyway, let's finish this thing with just the normal plug. So again, as I started off, you are going to make a little bit more non-conversational, rambly presentation for our mentorship, just on blood pressure and performance and all these things that we've talked about in a little bit more detail, a little bit more actionable advice. So if you are interested in the mentorship and you want to become a better coach and you want to hear that presentation, please reach out and I'll jump on a call and see if you are the right person for it. And as for I know you're just launching like an educational service online as well as many other things that you do.
We've got a lot of shit going on.
That's the one on topic for the moment. So if Zoe was here, I'm sure I'll hand the reins to her. But
for now, just buy Muscle Nerd shit.
Yeah, just go buy all of our stuff because I'm broke.
Yeah, the car boot sale will list
Cut
the
some
details.
bucks, car boot sale. We'll sell speakers and shirts.
Yeah.
You got lots of stuff going on. I know you're about to do a little bit of a world, not a tour, but a few different locations around the world as well. So you got lots going on. At least jump on your Instagram, give you a follow, the Muscle Nerds a follow, and
not my personal
No,
one.
you just do memes.
Yeah, don't send shit to my personal one. Just come for a laugh. Go to Muscle Nerds.
Yeah.
Go
I
to
think
that one. Sign up to the email
Zach,
list. Lots of resources. Fucking well worth it.
Zach, if you don't already follow Luke Leaman, he would trump you on the meme train right now. That is literally all Luke does.
Zach's only new to the meme game.
Yeah.
Right? It's like
I'm a novice. I'm a novice memer.
Oh, I'm a meme lord at this point.
Yeah.
You should see the stuff I don't post. Wow.
Separate. That goes in the car boot sale.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much for coming.
And that's
Red hot.
Actually, no, red hot. Yeah. Red hot.
All right.
That's it. Thank you for listening to Nexus Unloaded. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned on today's podcast, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gym services. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at NexusPerformance.Aus for any updates on what we are currently doing. See you all in the next episode.